And there we go. Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Hirsch at Home with Hirsch's, and thank you for joining us on our Motivational Monday in the new time slot, which is 11 a.m., because I'm talking to you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it is 4:59 a.m. in the morning. But I'm here, I'm ready, and we're ready to go. And we've got a fantastic lineup for you today. But thank you to my co-hosts, Stacey and Jess. Thank you to Glenda for putting this all together. And of course, our guest speaker today, Lynn. But before we introduce Lynn, I just want to say I'm reading an amazing book at the moment by Gabrielle Bernstein. And it's about how she took herself from trauma to profound freedom and inner peace. And really, that's what we're all aiming for. Imagine having profound freedom and inner peace. And my personal message is to have every woman financially free. Because if you're financially free, it just frees up so much of your mind that is normally worrying about money. Can I afford this? Am I going to balance my books at the end of this month? It frees your mind to take in other things. And that's what life is all about. Life's about being happy. And what do we do to make ourselves happy? So thank you to Jason and Stacey for coming on the show today. And Stacey, you're going to introduce Lynn for us.
Thanks so much, Margaret. Yeah, thanks so much. We're so excited, and thanks so much for still being with us. It's so incredible that you are in the States, but yet still part of our incredible webinars. Thank you. So Lynn, again, thank you so much for joining us. You were here 2 weeks ago, and sure, it was phenomenal. We got the most incredible feedback. So thank you. Lynn is a registered counselor, and she is passionate about seeing people overcome personal challenges in a way which strengthens and empowers them. Overcoming personal challenges is an opportunity to build a history of success, which gives us courage to face and overcome future challenges. So thank you, Lynn.
There you go, Lynn. And Lynn's talking about triggers today. And I love triggers. I have triggers. I'm so bad. I've been doing my job for 43 years. If somebody walks in and says, your service is bad, it's a trigger. I'm up and I'm there and I'm saying, what? How can you say that? And I take it on and I run with it straight away. That is a trigger that I can see coming. And I think all of us can see those triggers coming. And we know what our reaction is going to be, but we still do it anyway. Now, come on, Lynn, tell us, how do we stop ourselves from doing that?
Well, step one is obviously awareness and recognizing that we are being triggered in a situation. So I'm going to chat a little bit about triggers. I'm going to chat about the sensory elements of it today. And going back to that whole exercise we did in the previous session where I spoke about if your mind was a garden, what would you invite into that space? And how would you safeguard all the thoughts and all those experiences that you suddenly find yourself being affected by? So there's going to be bits and pieces. It's obviously not a therapy session. And if you find that this is evoking a response in you, my encouragement is that you seek help to process and navigate things on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what Gabrielle Bernstein says in her book as well. If you feel that you need help, ask for it. Don't try and help yourself. Go out and get that help, because you need professional help today. You can't do it yourself. You can't do it by Google. You've got to go out and get professional help, and it'll just take you over that hurdle. I bore a grudge for 14 years. I could not give it up. I went to a therapist, took me 3 sessions, and I was over it. And I suffered for 14 years for nothing, because if you hang on to something like that, it's like holding a hot coal. The only one who gets burnt is you, and everybody else was free from it. As soon as I let it go, I was free from holding that hot coal. So a lot of us, Lynn, realize that we're holding on to that hot coal, but we just can't let it go. How do we get there?
So I think, as I said, the first step is to become aware and to recognize that when we're being triggered, it's often not just that one moment, but it's a buildup of experiences that are triggering the same sense. So for a lot of people, they may feel completely overwhelmed. They may feel powerless in a situation. So it's about starting to, step one, recognize, what am I feeling? And if you are wanting to jot down 5 questions that I have put together for just a self-awareness journey, that you can take this with just with a little bit of understanding of how you're responding to a therapist, that you can navigate that space. We're not going to go through a therapy space right now, so that is a disclaimer. This is not about therapy. This is just about awareness to give you the courage to take the next step. So the first step that I always talk about is to acknowledge your emotion. and to recognize that your behavior is a symptom of something you are believing about yourself, the situation, another person, or behavior is a symptom of what you are feeling in that space. So you might ask me, what does that look like? And so if you have had an experience in the past where you feel completely helpless in a situation, if you are triggering that same emotion, you're not just triggering that one incident, you're triggering all the other incidences prior to that. That's what trauma starts to manifest as. And so it's so important that when that volcano starts to erupt and you start to feel that space, that you recognize, I'm feeling this, not just based on this event, but past events. And so recognizing that this behavior is a symptom of something that's been going on, and it's what I believe about a situation. And I think what's important that people recognize, even though you may feel it, it doesn't mean that it's always true. And so I feel helpless, but am I always helpless in a situation? I feel it, but is it true? And we start to turn those situations around from being things that we find ourselves under to stepping stones to walking into freedom. So you can turn it around. Instead of it coming, weighing you down, you turn it around as a stepping stone. I always talk about developing a history of success. So we want to take that, turn that around into a stepping stone to step into the new, to step into, well, maybe your first step is aware, that I'm now aware of it. The second step is, okay, well, when was the first time I felt this way? And you realize, well, maybe I felt that way if you had a hijacking experience, or if you felt helpless as a child. There are various reasons as to why you may be feeling that way. So step one, aware. Step two, this is a symptom. Okay, why do I feel that way? And then you start to unpack it in a very healthy, contained environment. Do you have any comments or questions on that step one before I go to the next?
I'm typing furiously here. So I must tell you, I'm typing furiously. And I just think, and for me, that volcano, you've got to do before the volcano starts to erupt, because when you hit my trigger, I can feel that volcano erupting, and I just know it's going to come out, onto the person. And I think to try and stop yourself at that stage and breathe and count 3, 2, 1. Breathe, and then what do I want? What I start to think is what I want the outcome to be. If I let this whole volcano erupt, I'm going to have a shouting match on my hands here. So what am I going to do to hold that in? And how does one control that emotion when you feel that volcano erupting, but you've got to just rein yourself in? It's quite difficult to do.
So that's where it's about practicing, and it's about recognizing it's one step at a time. So if you are able to recognize that volcano is actually unresolved trauma or unresolved hurt in your life, I always talk about a timeline in therapy, and we've got past, present, and future. And when I do therapy, I often draw a timeline. So we have the wounds of our past, which we will often bring into our present, which will be the volcano, and it will start to lie to us about our future. So you will never be this, or that's why awareness, and that's why I love doing that exercise that we did in the previous session, because you start to become aware of, what am I telling myself? What do I believe about myself right now? What do I believe about myself in relationships? What do I believe? Do I believe I can manage finances well? If I can't, stop taking it from a place of shame, but rather get the right help to empower you to. So what I always say is, emotions sometimes feel like they are pressing us down. We are powerless to them. But if we use them as a journey of self-awareness, we can turn it around to our stepping stone. So it becomes the next step that we take to the next level. And that's why it's so important that we do recognize that even though we are being triggered, it's the fight or flight response. So we'll either become aggressive, or some people freeze, or we retract. And so those questions that I ask, how is this helping me right now? Is this producing life? So go back to that picture of what is in my mind. Is it producing life? Do I want to sit under this tree? Do I want to eat the fruits of the tree that I'm sitting under right now? If not, well, let's turn that into firewood so that we can actually use it in a positive way. And so what I always encourage people is, we can train ourselves step by step and gently. So awareness, number one. Number two, if I scream and if I retaliate right now, what is that going to look like? Because we need to learn to respond and not react. So a reaction is like a volcanic eruption, and then there's debris, and there is mass, casualties along the way, which we don't really want. We want this to become an opportunity of growing through that space and recognizing that I'm not powerless to my past. I'm not powerless to the present situation. And that's where I always encourage my clients to say, well, what has happened in the past when you remember when you first experienced this sense of being powerless or hopelessness situation or overwhelmed by it, being fearful in that situation. And then what do we want to bring into our present? We only want to bring the lessons from the past. So we want to remember that we've overcome other situations, so we can overcome this. And then we also want to become aware of, are we allowing this to lie to us about our future? Are we allowing lies of, I'll never be X, Y, and Z, or I'll never overcome this, or I'll never be good enough in this area? Because then we're allowing our past to dictate our present and our future, where the reality is we are living in the present. Right now, I am online with you at 11:10 on Monday morning on the 28th of March. I can only live this moment now. I'm not living my past. I can bring my past into my present, which then affects how I am, navigating these things. But all I want to do is take the lessons of those experiences to give me courage to face present experiences and then build on to a future that looks hopeful. And I think what's important to remember is that there are times in our lives that we're going to be faced with situations that are really challenging. And in those situations, it's important to recognize feelings are telling us things. We feel uncomfortable, we feel overwhelmed, we feel nervous. And, some people start to think, oh, there's something wrong with me. But if I were to ask you a question, so a current trigger for people at the moment is COVID. And how do we navigate that? It's the vaccine versus no vaccine. It's the socializing versus don't socialize. It's mask versus don't wear masks. There are varying opinions and varying emotions around COVID, but for some people, there's a very real trauma element where they've lost people they love. And so that becomes a trigger because there's so much uncertainty. So in that space of uncertainty and loss that has been really real for a lot of people, how do we navigate that? Well, I have lost somebody that I love, that's dear to me. Obviously, in that context, I'm going to feel an emotion that is normal. So I think what's important to recognize with triggers where things have become an unhealthy trigger or things are still current in process. I'm navigating grief. I'm navigating uncertainty. I'm navigating, I don't know how it will affect me if I get COVID. So it's all of those things that we need to stop and say, actually, if I were to draw a timeline or if I were to do a little mind map or, and I say this cautiously, if I speak to somebody trusted, knowing that not all people, we spoke about the inner circle the last time, not all people are going to be safe to navigate this with. But if I were to draw a timeline or create a picture of where I am right now, is my concern real? And it is. So just as it would be the first time you ever go live on Facebook or the first time you ever go and stand on the stage and share something, there's going to be a sense of nervousness. Is that normal? Yes, it is. And so what's important is to stop and take a step back and say, for what I'm feeling right now in the context I'm in, is it normal? And for some people, it is. But if it's this unhealthy where you're completely derailed, then my encouragement is that actually perhaps we should look at what is still speaking to you about your past, what is coming in from your past that you need to turn around into a stepping stone for your present. Because the other side is we start to have the sense of foreboding about our future. And those thoughts are going around and around and around. It's like a washing machine that keeps going around and around and around, and it doesn't stop. We need to stop the cycle. And we can slowly unpack all the washing. So you take a pair of socks out and you look at it and you go, well, what are these socks telling me? Okay, well, I've learned from that. Oh, or you might say, I've overcome this. I've grown through it. Yay, that is my history of success. What did I do? How did I overcome that? And how can I implement those strategies to overcome future issues? Because the future is something that is unknown. And just as we've navigated the last 2 years, there's been so much variation and so much change that we've actually learned to live in the present far more than we ever have. We've had the sense where we feel that we can plan our future, and then another lockdown comes or another wave hits us and things have to change. So we've learned to become far more adaptable. Others cope a lot better with that than some. But the reality is we've learned to live in the present. Like today, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. And when we get to tomorrow, I will deal with tomorrow, because that's all I can deal with. I don't know what is coming tomorrow. I may believe I do. I may have a sense and an open plan about what it looks like. But in reality, I'm with you right now. And if I'm not being present with you now, am I giving you all that I am?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's amazing, because my mother's 97, and I said to her, Mom, I'm writing a book about the history of our family. Can you go back into the past and tell me about it? She said to me, you know what? I've been there. I've done that. I've got the T-shirt. At the moment, I'm living in the present. I am just living for today. I'm just going to be here today. I don't want to think about the past. I've been there. I'm just living for this minute. And I know that tomorrow is coming, and I know that I'll deal with it then. But for today, I'm just dealing with today. And that was just such well, I was annoyed. I was like, oh no, Mom, because you've got all these things that you could be telling me. She says, I'm not going back there. I've been there. I've done that. I'm living for today. So that was a real lesson to me as well. But I just want to go through the unpacking, because, sometimes we think we're unpacking that suitcase of junk that's in our head. But do we unpack the whole suitcase? We sort of take the one layer off the top and think, well, I've unpacked this, I've got it now, but there are still those other layers. And in Danielle Bernstein's book, she says how she had to go through those layers, and as she went through them, it got more and more difficult to unpack those lower layers of the suitcase where all her emotions, because we stuff them in and we push them down and we put more on top of them. And when we start letting them out, it's quite a traumatic thing. And how do we do that? Obviously, first prize is to get a therapist, but I think we've got to start doing it ourselves a little bit at a time first before we can get to the therapist stage, because we do the easy things, and when it gets to the difficult things, where I know when I was stuck, that's when I went to a therapist and said, look, just help me get over this hurdle, because it was just like a hurdle. And once I got over it, shoof, then I was free to run to the finish line type of thing. So when you say unpack these things, take out one thing at a time, examine it, take out the next thing, examine it. And then you get to the stage where, oh, I don't want to go any further. How do you get over that hurdle?
So, and that's where, unfortunately, not that it's unfortunate, but my recommendation would be that you need to take it to that level with a therapist, so that it can be done in a healthy and empowering way, and that you're not unraveling in a way that you feel completely overwhelmed. So I just want to clarify a point about going to the past. I'm not saying we don't go to the past. What I'm saying is we recognize traumas of the past and wounds of the past that are still functioning in our future, so that we can heal, so that they're not contaminating our future in our present. And so unpacking those things there's so many dynamics and so many things that are at play in this. So if people are aware of a physical, emotional response, so your heart might start racing. You may
start breathing, hyperventilating.
There's also sensory elements. There's sensory memory. So people that have been hijacked or witnessed a traumatic event, they suddenly will taste the same taste, and all the emotions will flood back, because there's been association with that trigger and the feeling and the sensory experience. You could see something, you could smell it, you could taste it, you could feel the sensation of the steering wheel under your hands. You could hear something. If all the five senses are involved in this, and you may suddenly be somewhere, and that sensory memory is triggered, and you may not know what you have experienced, but there has been a trauma. And so what you do is you use your emotional responses, you use your sensory response, you write it down, and you seek help. So unpacking those deeper levels, the first thing is to be aware of it, and then to write, keep a journal. When I was in this place, I felt X, Y, and Z. When I smelt this is how my body responded. I don't know why. I just started feeling like my heart rate was increasing, and just felt so uncomfortable, so stretched in that space, and I never want to go there again. Those are sort of indicators that we need to deal with something on a deeper level, and that we really do need to get help, in a controlled environment, because the therapist will help you navigate that feeling. The last thing you want is to have an emotional breakdown and feel alone again, because in a lot of those situations you do feel alone. So now you're triggering that sense of being alone instead of being able to navigate it in an environment that is appropriate to what you are navigating.
You know, I had to laugh because one of my friends, she was going through a bit of trauma, and she said, so I went to have my nails done. I said, why did you go and have your nails done? Because she said, I just go and sit there. And then I talked to the lady who's doing my nails, who has no knowledge of me, doesn't know anything about me really. And then I tell her the whole story and I just get it off my chest. And when I come back, my nails are done and I've got it all off my chest at the same time. And I thought, how often are hairdressers and nail technicians and that, we use them like therapists, but they're not really, because they're not qualified to say to us, hey, hang on a sec, you know, you've got this off your chest, but there's more to it than this. But I just want to go to Grace says it takes her back to the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I think often we do feel the fear and just have to just keep going forward. Sorry, Stacey, what were you going to say?
No, when you were talking about the hairdresser or a therapist, you know, a beauty therapist becoming a therapist, my hairdresser has actually recently studied to be a life coach, because she just said, you know, everybody is coming to with all their issues. She needs to be able to give back to them. And so I said, well, do you want to become, you know, do you actually want to do that? And she said, for now, she wants to be a hairdresser that can help. So yeah, lovely thought at least.
Yeah.
And I think what's, you know, what people are experiencing in that moment is that somebody's just listening to them without giving an opinion. And that's the
not judging. Yeah, we don't want someone to judge us. Yeah.
Not telling you not to feel a certain way, not telling you you're overreacting. They're actually just listening, because at the end of the day, they're being paid for what they're doing. And so it's not their role. But I think that a lot of people forget the power of that moment of just being heard. Because some people are external processes. They need to speak in order to process, because they hear what they're saying. And a lot of people find the solution just by expressing it. And some people are internal processes. That it takes a huge amount of courage to be able to speak to somebody. And that's why it's so, all these things are so varied according to who you are, what you've gone through, what your past experiences have been, and have you got skills to navigate those things? And I think that's what's so important that people realize. Every situation is so unique that, you know, we're having a general discussion today about therapy, and I'll go through some more of those steps that I'd mentioned in the, you know, when we started the session. But this is step one, is awareness. And what do I believe about myself and the situation that I'm in right now? What is my body telling me? How am I reacting? Have I felt this emotion before? Have I been in this space before? And that starts to give us keys to what the next level may be.
And I think speaking it out as well. I think that, as you say, speaking it out, you've got to get it out, because, as I say, we're pushing all these emotions down, down, down. We've been taught to do that as children, you know, speak when you spoke to, you know, children should be seen and not heard and things like that. So all those things have been pushed down for so long. If we can just get them out and expose them, I think we'll feel so much better. It's such a weight off your shoulders when you've actually got out there. You know, I think with Brene Brown, excuse me now, Brene Brown with her book being vulnerable, you know, as women, we taught not to be vulnerable. Just be tough. Just tough it out, girl. You know, suck it up, buttercup. And now that whole system is changing. And for us as women in this day and age, we have to be able to change with it. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to change it. Brene Brown, to put herself out there. This Gabrielle Bernstein, to put herself out there. She said she could only talk about what she needed to get out when she was on stage. When it was with her husband and her friends, she still couldn't get it out. But when she went on stage, she managed to get it all out. And then other people could relate to her from the, you know, what she was talking about.
Yeah. It makes me think of something I read a while back, when we were talking about triggers and the fact that the emotions that come with the trigger are a symptom of something. There's some sort of pain, some sort of past, something that's happened there. And I read something that said, and it was a light bulb moment for me, and it said there's basically only 3 things that you can do with pain. The first one is to deal with it now. The second thing is to deal with it later. And the third option is to never deal with it and basically live with it for the rest of your life. And I think generally people think it's going, you know, the good old saying of time will heal, but there's a lot of things that time actually makes worse. It doesn't heal. And so we wait and wait and wait, hoping that these feelings will go away. But obviously it doesn't work that way, because we are made up of the feelings. So I think it takes an average of 11 years. We've discussed it before. I think that it takes an average of 11 years for people to actually take the step and seek counsel or therapy or help in any sort of way, from the onset of symptoms, which is sad, really, when you think of it, because that's 11
She
years
literally
of
suffered for
time
11
that we can't get back. Yeah.
So what Peter says here, I learned to seek help as well. It has helped massively since she suffers from anxiety. And I think that's the first thing to realize. I suffer from anxiety. I need help. Let me go and get the help. And then it'll help me to get over the hurdle. Teresa says, fear is the one thing that physically and emotionally manipulates you and prevents you from being the amazing person you are. And I think to all the women out there, you know, you can be so much, you can become the person. That's why I say I love working with Mrs. South Africans. They become the woman they want to be. You know, this is the woman I would like to be. And for me, I'm becoming the woman I want to be. And to me, it's just, it's amazing now that I have the strength to do that. And I needed to get somebody to help me to get up to there. So yeah, I think everybody out there who's wondering, you know, am I okay? Am I enough? Yes, you are. And I hope everybody's written on their mirror, I am enough. I still have it wherever I go. I write on my mirror, I am enough. I'm staying in a hotel at the moment. The maid thinks I'm crackers, but anyway. I think you have to say to yourself, I am enough, but I can be better. And what type of woman do I want to be? And Lynn, when you're talking to people and they're saying, you know, that's wrong, the next thing's wrong, how do you say to them, what would you like to be? You know, you can have anything you want. You can become the person you want to be. What does that person look like? Do you ever say that to them?
So, you know, for me, the biggest question is about helping people recognize that who they are is who they are. And it's about, so the biggest thing is self-awareness. And that's why I love to do that exercise with all my clients that we did 2 weeks ago about what are the thoughts that are going around and around in your mind? Because they either are producing a fruit that is amazing in your life and positive and life-giving, or it's holding you back. And so a lot of people just need freedom to become who they are. It depends on words that have been spoken to them. You know, you need to be like that person, or you shouldn't be like this, or you shouldn't be like that. So it's, for me, the biggest thing is helping people recognize this is who I am. And maybe this has been my life journey, but it doesn't have to define who I continue to be. And that's why, you know, why is our past speaking into our present and our future? And the biggest thing is, if you were to imagine past wounds as a physical injury on your body where it's still bleeding, versus a scab versus a scar. And so it doesn't take much if you've got a scab, it doesn't take much to get it bleeding again and disturb the healing process. And so it's so important that we look at what are we saying to ourselves? What do we allow people to say to us? And I'm not saying you could go out there and suddenly become aggressive and self-assertive, but being in that space often starts internally. So recognizing in my mind, actually, I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with being in this situation. And what are my friendships based on? Are they based on me always giving? Or is it a reciprocal, healthy relationship? So we just start to ask questions around, what is your long-term vision? Or what is your short-term vision? A lot of people struggle with long-term. So we start with short-term. If you could imagine yourself in a week's time, what is one thing that you want to practice? What is one thing that you want to achieve where you start to recognize who you are and what you celebrate about who you are? We really do live in a critical judgmental society where you've got to, and it is changing, but you've got to kind of fit in the box. And when you don't fit in the box, if you look at children nowadays, education, not all, but some of the systems are still very much, you've got to fit in that box. And not all, most people don't fit in a box. And so it's about recognizing and celebrating your uniqueness so that you can embrace who that is. Because if we as adults and if we as parents can't do it for ourselves, what do we think our children are going to do? Children learn from what they see us doing, and not just what we say. And so it's so important that as we navigate the space, that I am confronting those things from my past, because I'm giving my children courage that sometimes I don't feel all together. Sometimes I feel uncomfortable, and it's okay to have those bad days, but let's look at what do we believe in that situation so that we can start to shift it and challenge it.
Yeah, I think you've got to understand what is upsetting you, why you're reacting the way you are, and then you deal with it. And I think that's something that's really, really important. Okay, let's go to where are we up to, point number 2 or 3? I've got pages of notes here, so I lost track.
So I'll quickly go through 2 and 3 because we've kind of touched on it before. Point 2 was this the first time you ever felt this feeling before or had this kind of emotion? And we've chatted about that in detail already. And then number 3, do you feel out of control? And is this triggering your need to be in control? So a lot of people feel comfortable with control because it's a way of not getting fearful. And so we start to believe that we can control our environment and we can control situations. And then when we suddenly are out of control, we are completely triggered, because control has been our safety net and not the ability to grow and cope through space that we don't feel in control. Any questions around that?
Okay, so I was still typing. I love that, because control is my safety net. If I'm in control, I feel I'm controlling this. As soon as I lose control, then that's a big trigger for me, to actually take the control back. I always say I'm a control freak, and I try to control all the situations I'm in, which people say is the wrong thing. But I'm comfortable when I'm in control. But if I'm not controlling the situation, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for me.
So I think in those situations, it's important to unpack. So what does control mean? Is it actually the correct definition of control? Or are you, because it's context related. So if you're running a big corporation, you've got to have certain things in place that are safety nets for that. But are you controlling every relationship interaction? Because if we are, is fear dictating? So it's about the context of everything. So you can have, what I like to look at, and it's a context of parenting as well. Children need to learn from their actions. They need to know that there's a consequence to every action. So if they decide they want to jump off the trampoline in a safe way, then they figure out, okay, I can do that. And then they try to take it to the next level, the next level, the next level. As a lot of children do, they learn from experiences. So what I always like to say to parents is, you can't just dictate to your children all the time. Ask questions, have those conversations with them, but allow them to make some decisions for the developmental stage at which they're at. Because then you're creating a safety net for them to understand my actions or my words have a consequence, a positive or negative. And if we're constantly taking away their ability to learn, then we're not empowering them to be adults that can make healthy decisions. And so what I always say about control is, let's rather create a safety net. So what does my safety net need to look like in my work environment? What does my safety net need to look like in a home environment? What does my safety net need to look like in relationships? And so some relationships, as I spoke about, you've got your inner circle, and you may not be as controlling in those relationships where you feel completely safe. If you don't feel safe with a person, rather take away that sense of, I have to be in control, to, I can have a safe conversation with this person, just a basic, how's the weather? What's your next holiday looking like? Without an emotional attachment to it. Just learn to navigate the people that are safe, be vulnerable with, and the people that you enjoy time with, but you can have a very basic conversation with them rather than the need to, I have to be in control, because we actually aren't. We can only control how we respond and what we believe and how we behave. We cannot control, as much as we believe it, we cannot control other people's responses. We can't control what they believe. We can't control how they behave and how they react or respond. So we have one person that wants to be in control and another person that wants to be in control in other levels. They come together and it's quite an explosion.
So Teresa says, why do we have the need to be in control? What makes us feel that need? I feel safe when I'm in control, because then I know what's going to happen, because I don't like things to be out of control. I don't like surprises. Don't ever give me a surprise party. I hate surprises. So it's not my scene. But Teresa says, why do we have the need to be in control?
But it could be a learned response where that's what's been modeled to us, that you've got to be in control all the time. You can't, people haven't got the skills to navigate conflict. They don't have the skills to navigate uncertainty. It could be a fear-based thing that they've gone through. So, the responses are varied. It could be various things or reasons why they've done that. But for a lot of people, it is a fear motivated thing. They don't want to be hurt. They don't want to be vulnerable. So it's easier to have those things in place and you feel safe. So it's your safety net. So control becomes our safety net versus what is actually a real safety net that is going to help me be authentic and vulnerable when I can be and when I need to be. And when I don't want to be vulnerable with a person, I don't have to be in control of them, but I can choose the level of interaction that I have with them. And I'm not sure that.
So what are safety nets? What are the safety nets that we put in place to make sure that we stay in control?
So we're not trying to stay in control.
Okay, I missed that one then, sorry.
Can't control other people. All we can do is navigate our emotional state. All we can do is navigate, I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. So with me feeling uncomfortable, something is upsetting me. Something is making me feel vulnerable. What can I do in that situation? So you're having conversations with yourself all the time without saying to the person, I really don't feel comfortable in your presence right now. But it's more a case of recognizing there's been a shift in your emotions in that moment. So, and some things are easier to navigate. Obviously, the more personal your relationship, when you're having these engagement with person and there's an accusation that's coming your way, after the conversation, you need to stop and say, was that about them or was this about me? Maybe it's both of us. And maybe you just need time to allow that to settle before you navigate it. But every encounter with a person is an opportunity for you to grow in awareness around yourself and what your triggers are and your emotional state in that space, what you believe about yourself, what you believe about other people, and what you believe about a situation. So we're not trying to keep control, because control is actually a defense mechanism that's not really a healthy thing. So when I say we are not trying to control, it's not a negative thing. It's just more becomes a space of awareness. Okay, so right now I feel really uncomfortable. So what is this telling me? Is this the first time I felt uncomfortable? Oh no, this is triggering something where I had an uncomfortable interaction with a person and they said to me, I am closed off, or I'm not compassionate, where maybe my heart is to be compassionate. And so we start to recognize our internal dialogue in that moment. And instead of reacting to them, we put that thing in our mind. Remember, I spoke about the safety net that catches the thoughts that are uncomfortable. We keep it in that holding space, and then we take it out when we are in an environment that is safe. So always remember, my picture is a trampoline, a trampoline with a safety net on the side. The kids can jump and bounce and have as much fun as they want. That net will catch them without falling out and breaking a bone or falling on their head or whatever it may be. But there's fun and there's joy in that moment. And then they start to learn as they get older. Some parents take the safety net away, but they've learned that if I jump over that, there's going to be a consequence. So in our interactions, where before we've allowed control to dictate and dominate our relationships, we realize that it could get messy. And in that space, what am I comfortable with? Is this relationship a relationship which is strong enough for me to be able to have an open, honest conversation with them? Because in healthy relationships, open and honest conversations are building bridges of connection. And we've got those pillars that keep it safe, that are strong enough to hold those connection points. But if it's not, control is not a healthy connection point. If you look at parents that control their children, when they grow up and they leave, what is their default response? They either don't know how to make adult decisions, they don't know how to navigate trauma or conflict, or they leave that parent and they don't want to come back to them because they've been told how to feel, how to react, what to do, what is right, what is wrong, their whole life. So it could have one or two implications. And so every single day, the choices I'm making, how am I empowering myself? How am I empowering my relationships? How am I empowering my children in this space? I might not agree with them. And that's the thing, a lot of people don't realize that we don't have to agree on things. I might not agree with what they're saying, and I might not agree with what they're saying I am. But if I am peaceful about myself and I'm navigating that internal response that is going on, and I go home and I find a safe place to externalize it, whether it's a drawing or I go for a run, I'm always recognizing it. I'm not denying that it's there. I'm recognizing it so that I can turn this around. Every opportunity is an opportunity to turn it around to a stepping stone. And sometimes we need help to take that step to cross the river, or to take that one step. But if we think that control is a healthy mechanism, we're not in a great space. And I don't mean that in a negative, judgmental way. It's just a response. But Margaret, for your situation, I wouldn't say, having safety nets in place in different contexts. It's not an unhealthy thing to have a safety net. We need a safety net. Our staff need to know what are the parameters of work. Where do I have leeway? Where do I not? And every person is different. So relationship and length of time that they've been in interactions with you, all those things start to dictate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Hey, and when you actually look at it from an outsider's point of view, and I think with a lot of this, we've got to look at ourselves from outside in. We're always looking from inside out. And I think if we can turn that around, that'll be a really good step in the right direction. Okay, so that was 2 and 3. What's number 4?
So number 4 is challenge the lens you're wearing regarding a situation. So our lenses, or to, imagine, I say to people, imagine you live life wearing dark glasses all day, every day. We become adjusted to it. So it becomes our norm. We think this is what life actually looks like. But the reality is that through life experiences, through parenting, through, cultural reflections, whatever it may be, that becomes our norm. Then we have an interaction with a person and we get triggered. But maybe this is an opportunity for me to shift an unhealthy perspective on something. Mm. And that's why I always say it's so important to be aware. What am I believing about myself in the situation? Is it true or is it not? What is the fruit of this lens? Is it producing fruit that I want to eat? Or if I look back, are these cycles unhealthy? Is it a pattern that I should maybe get help to break? So that's really important, that we challenge the lens that we wear, and that we can actually, and it's not a once-off thing. It's as we build courage to navigate those things, then we realize, actually, I can overcome this. This is a history of success. I overcame that and I challenged that lens. And it's actually quite freeing when I think I don't have to, behave in a certain way for a certain person. I am okay with who I am. And if you don't love me, that's okay. If you don't like me, that's okay. I am okay to love you for who you are. I might not agree with it, but I'm okay to acknowledge who you are and what is amazing about you.
I always say 10% of all people will like you, 10% of all people will dislike you, and 80% really couldn't give a shit. And we spend our lives trying to get that 90% on our side, where we should just forget about them and focus on the 10% who really like us. But I want to ask you about patterns, because I've got a friend who's just got divorced for the 5th time. And you think after 5 times, you'd realize there's a pattern here. And she said, but no, all these men were different. They were completely different guys. I looked for this and this one, that's for this one. And they just all let me down. I said, times 5, you've got to start looking at yourself now. What's your feeling on that one?
Yeah, so, often, and this is obviously just a very general comment. I don't know the situation, but it is normally an indication, if things keep repeating, that there's something going on internally that perhaps needs to be shifted or she needs to navigate. She might not be aware. It could be a latent trauma that she's not aware of. It could be a lens that she's not aware that she's looking at life through. There's so many varying things, but generally, if it's a cycle that keeps repeating, that's producing an unhealthy fruit, then definitely we need to go through a process of therapy and be courageous enough. And I say that in compassion because, there could be, deep trauma that is not, that she's not aware of, but it's affecting behavior. Mm. So behavior and cycles are a symptom of something that we have experienced. It's a symptom of a feeling or an experience or an encounter that we sometimes know has happened, but sometimes we don't.
Wow. Okay. And number 5.
So the last thing, what can I do about the situation to grow through this and learn through this? Because this is about building a history of success. So, I've touched on these things. And this builds confidence and courage for the next obstacle we are facing. Often stress and fear are linked to recognizing what we are really in control of and what we are not in control of. but there's a mix of uncontrollable elements that we do have some control in. And what would those things be? So, the one explanation, and, when you're working with patients that struggle with anxiety, is they obviously don't want to be triggered in their anxiety. But the reality in life, as I've said, there are controllable elements. I can control myself. And I mean that in a healthy way. Like, I can navigate my emotions. And if I need to go and express them in a healthy way, I do that in a healthy way. So an unhealthy way would be going and punching somebody. There's going to be a consequence.
You can punch back.
Some men like to punch. I say, well, rather get a boxing bag. Use your boxing bag. So I always, what is a healthy expression? So some people find exercise is a healthy expression. Some people find reading. Some people find music. Some people find going for a walk. A healthy expression, not an addictive cycle. And so what I always say is that in life, we have controllable and uncontrollable. But even in the uncontrollable, there are choices. So I can't control what a spouse once has chosen in their life. I can't control what my child has chosen in their life. I can't control what the weather is doing. But in that space, I can still make choices. So if it's pouring with rain, I can choose to go outside with an umbrella. If it is boiling hot outside, I can choose to stay inside and put the air conditioner on. Some people love the sun. So some people would go outside and be in the sun and be in the pool, whatever it may be. So even when there are uncontrollable elements, what am I choosing in that moment? What do I believe I can still choose? And so I would say I prefer the word choose than control. So what am I choosing right now? Because other people are choosing. You can't control what they choose, but I control what I choose. I control what I choose to express, what I choose to think about a person, what I choose to believe about them. And especially for myself, in those triggers, what am I going to choose to believe about myself when I'm being triggered? Can I choose to believe that I have courage to very gently, step by step, navigate and unpack those things, unpack all the washing out of the washing machine? We're not doing it all at once, because if you think about it, when you take a whole bundle of washing out of a washing machine, it all comes out in a mess. Rather, let's take it item by item. So it doesn't feel overwhelming and it doesn't feel messy, but let's just do it one step at a time. And we slowly build this courage to take one step and the next step and the next step. And sometimes we need somebody to help us get from one point to the next, and that's okay. So keep your circle close that are people that are safe, that love you, that accept you, and know what other people's parameters are. We all function in some levels of brokenness. We are all navigating heartache. We're all navigating experiences. And when we start to look at people from that perspective, we recognize, well, maybe they're triggering on a level and I'm triggering on a level. And together, this is just an unhealthy explosion. So recognize your internal dialogue. Recognize those indicators, the heart response, the recognition of the sensory response, and just start to say, is this the first time? What am I believing? Do I need to shift my expectations? Do I need to shift my lens? And how can this help me build courage for my future, that I can overcome other situations that are overwhelming?
Yeah, and often it's not about you. I remember there was a chap called Brian Beach who used to have a restaurant called The Colony in Durban. And I remember chatting to him and he said, sometimes I can serve up the best meal, but if the husband and wife have had a fight on the way down, they're going to say this is a terrible meal. And so, and I think that puts everything in perspective for me. So, because when I'm with customers, I give them the best possible service, and sometimes they come in and it's something they've had a fight on the way, something's happened, and they'll take it out on the next person they see. And because with us, we fix broken things, so they've got the broken thing, and they're taking all their anger out on this broken, inanimate object, rather than actually thinking, oh my God, because I had this fight with my husband, I'm now feeling really terrible, and I'm going to just give it to this poor person. So often it's not about us, it's about them. So yeah, I always do that. Mary Jean says, I find when I choose to write a journal and dump those feelings, it helps. And she says she loves your washing machine analogy. So I must say, I'm going to use that. I'm going to borrow that one. So she says, watching monkeys frolicking is the best thing for me. You know, the penguins are very soothing, sitting on the beach, just calming yourself down in those situations. So when you get that trigger that sets you off, how do you pull yourself in? How do you rein yourself in so that you can feel that trigger, you can feel that emotion, but you say, hang on a sec. How do you do that?
So that's where I always say, you know, what is this telling me about myself right now? And it's self-awareness is something you practice. And sometimes you succeed in it, sometimes you don't. But the biggest thing is recognizing a shift in your emotion. So I'm now suddenly feeling terrified and I want to bolt out of this room. What is happening? So you have a conversation with yourself if you're able to. Because there could be really deep trauma that people listening are, you know, for them, I would encourage them to go and seek medical intervention in that moment because there's something that's going on that they need help for. But general day-to-day, you know, encounters, what I would say is recognize it. That is, and I know it sounds like a basic encouragement, but it's the biggest thing. A lot of people don't recognize what is going on in that moment. So
what about meditating in that moment? What about saying, hang on, let me just sit here for 2 minutes and let me go into myself in that moment?
But so the first step is to recognize it. Because if you don't recognize you've been triggered, you're going to explode. And then you have your coping strategy, whether it's to breathe. Some people might want to meditate. Some people might say, have the courage or the awareness to say to a person that they are triggered with, sorry, just one moment. And I just need to
go to the
bathroom, whatever it may be. You know, get that sense of control in yourself back and recognize it, have the conversation. And, you know, some people might need to delay a meeting and just say, thank you so much. You know, I realized that this is an issue that I hadn't recognized that we needed to process. You know, it depends on the context, but even if you can reschedule it until you feel skilled at doing it. If you think about people that do conflict resolution, they are skilled at not being triggered. Yeah. They recognize it and they don't allow that emotion to dictate to them in that space. So, and I'm not saying that in a harsh way, but what I do and what I encourage people to do is recognize it. Then once you are able to get through it, go home and process it. So use it as a way. Is this something I still need to process in myself? Is it about them? Is it about both of us? And then whatever the next healthy step would be, you know, challenging those mindsets, do the drawings, do whatever the process is. But as you say, the biggest thing is to recognize and then use your immediate coping mechanism. Sometimes you can't leave and you need to be really courageous. But for me, the biggest thing is, what is the goal of the meeting right now? The goal of the meeting is to have a resolution about X, Y, and Z. Sometimes meetings of resolution need more than one meeting. But in that moment, so what is the goal right now? If I respond in this way, I'm going to cause a disconnect. If I am able to navigate this emotion, get myself back, and then go home and process, then I can actually take a step towards resolution in this moment. And I think the biggest thing, people see different as a problem.
Yeah, they do.
Different is not actually always a problem because there are some times that we are not going to see eye to eye on a topic. So it's about learning to be comfortable with what I believe and learning to be comfortable with what you believe and being able to honor the person in that space. And so then you start to recognize where there are similarities in developing or taking steps to that goal. So maybe my steps are slightly different to another person's steps, but what is the end goal? Is it the same goal that we're working towards? Then we can find some kind of overlap. And maybe you need to do what you need to do, and I need to do what I need to do in order to navigate those steps to get to that end goal. But always remember that different is not bad. I think we've been taught for so long.
We all have to be the same. You're the same, yeah. Stacey, from those 5 points, what did you take out of those 5 points?
Sure. So throughout it, I just kept thinking, we really need to be having conversations with ourselves. We need to have a good relationship with ourselves to be able to be speaking to ourselves through all the different triggers that we have in life, and being able to not just act on a whim, but teaching ourselves to talk back to ourselves. And, throughout it, I was like, how powerful is therapy? How powerful is seeing a therapist? Because that is when we truly have those conversations where we can, like you said, unpack the past and deal with all the triggers and peeling away the onion, really. So has been so huge, is just conversation with self all the time.
Fantastic. And Jess, what did you get out of those 5 points?
Yeah, also a lot. Thanks, Lynn. A really, really great session again. I think something that kept coming up in my mind while we were talking, or while Lynn was talking rather, is yes, the importance of understanding our triggers, and that we come with these past traumas that create these inaccurate or accurate belief systems, and we create this lens. But something that kept coming to me as well is to understand that in our partners and people close to us as well, because I think if we understand our partner's triggers and our partner's past traumas and the way they react in certain situations, that we would probably come to the table with a whole lot more compassion rather than like that defensiveness. And if we understand, obviously, if we understand each other better, we're going to get along better. So that kept coming up for me, is just, getting to know where the other person is coming from, because I think when we start to understand this link between our behavior and our thoughts and feelings, and that our thoughts and feelings stem from our past, that it opens up the space to be more free and to create change, which is fantastic. Another thing that's really, really stuck with me is Lynn's comment about we don't always in control, but in the spaces that we don't have control, we have choice. And I think we forget that. It's easier to go, I can't control it, full stop, rather than can't control it, but what I can do is A, B, or C kind of thing. And then another thing that came, last one, is that when it comes to the day-to-day struggles, I personally feel a lot more easily triggered if I haven't had my basic needs met. And I think that's something that's also very overlooked sometimes. If I've had a bad night, a teller looking at me the wrong way can get to me, versus another day.
I'm hungry. I'm hungry, I'm miserable.
No sleep, no food. I can get hangry, and I always know, I feel that feeling, that need for control is heightened if I'm tired. And so I think to also just make sure that we're doing what our bodies need on that level as well. But again, thank you, Lynn. It was incredible.
Thank you. Stacey, who's coming to visit us next week? This is going to be exciting.
So next week is Damien. So excited to have Damien again. And he is going to be doing it on exercise and veganism and how the two intertwine.
Wow, that's amazing. And because I'm a vegan, so I love vegan. It's not easy, especially I'm in the States now, especially here, to be vegan. They don't understand that. Yes, madam, I can give you that. I've got some chicken. Could you have chicken? No, I can't have chicken. Can I put some cheese on that? No, I'm vegan. You can't do that. And I just said, I got a lovely thing of milk. It said non-dairy creamer contains milk. So, being vegan is not easy, but it is life-changing. And I cannot recommend it enough. My friend Melanie Hawken started being vegan, and I saw her just transform before my eyes. I know that I would never ever be able to have this amount of energy if I was not vegan, and it's quite difficult. And I must say, here I've had a couple of relapses because I do love American bacon, because American bacon's never seen a pig. I want to tell you, it's just rice paper with flavoring on it. But it's a completely different thing. But thank you so much, Lynn, for an amazing session again today. We absolutely loved it. We loved talking to you. We loved the way your cool, calm, collected attitude. Mine is always I had to laugh when you say with the boxing, because somebody said to me, would you like to take up kickboxing? I said I could never do that because I'm too emotional. I just might kickbox the wrong person. But but it was just amazing to have you on the show again. Thank you so much for your down-to-earth, wonderful approach to life and to ourselves and our emotions. Stacey and Jess, I'd love to have something on menopause, because my friend came into the store the other day and she was screaming and shouting like a mad person. She went home, she phoned me, she said, Margaret, I have to apologize. She said, but I'm going through menopause and my emotions completely took over. So I'd love to have something on menopause and how it affects your emotions, because a lot of women don't realize, one, that they're going through menopause, and two, how it's affecting them. So I think that's one I'd love to do as well. So everybody's saying thank you so much for a fabulous session again today. Thank you, Stacey and Jess. Thank you to Glenda for putting it together. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you Monday talking about exercise, which is amazing, and veganism, which is even more amazing. Thank you, my two favorite subjects.
Amazing.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Margaret. Enjoy, Margaret. Enjoy the States.
Thank you. Bye.